Welcome back to Outside Views, and today we're exploring our most complex topic, Brexit. Will there be a good reset or a bad reset? As we delve into the issue, let's consider how Brexit has shaped the UK's relationship with the EU, especially now under Keir Starmer's leadership. The Brexit reset, as it's being called, aims to re-establish UK-EU ties, but it's quickly proving to be more complicated than expected. When we look at Starmer's approach to Brexit, we see both optimism and obstacles. Starmer came into office promising a new direction for the UK, one that would seek better cooperation with the EU. And early on, Starmer made it clear that restoring ties with Europe was central to his government's agenda. Many pro-Europe lobbyists in Brussels were initially hopeful. They saw Starmer's early trips to Paris and Berlin and the frequent visits by shadow ministers to Brussels as signs of a genuine strategy in the making. But now, only a few months into Starmer's term, some of that early optimism is starting to fade. So why the shift in tone? Part of the issue is that Starmer's government has yet to clarify what this reset is meant to achieve. For all the talk about building bridges with Europe, there's little substance to show what form these bridges might take. One Brussels insider recently said that while Starmer's team made plenty of positive noise before the election, they've been less forthcoming since taking office. So, what exactly is Starmer hoping to accomplish with this reset? Many in Brussels are still in the dark, and they are growing increasingly frustrated with a lack of clarity from London. So let's break down what this good reset might have looked like and why the reality seems to be leaning towards a bad reset. Ideally, a good reset would be about more than just warm words and vague promises. It would involve a concrete, detailed plan outlining areas for cooperation and specific goals for the future of UK-EU relations. It would also take into account the new political cycle in Brussels. Following the recent European elections, a new EU Parliament and Commission are coming into place, offering the UK a chance to reset its image with a fresh set of leaders, except the leader. And that's where understanding Brussels becomes so crucial. A smart reset strategy would acknowledge that Brussels is a complex political environment with its own internal dynamics. But according to sources, Starmer's government hasn't engaged with Brussels in a way that reflects this complexity. They have not reached out to understand who within the EU might be sympathetic to British interests or who has connections to the UK. And this oversight is critical because Brussels is a city where both official and informal relationships matter. One insider put it plainly, for Britain to navigate EU politics successfully, it needs to understand the unofficial as well as the official. For instance, security is a prime area where the UK could potentially deepen ties with the EU. But there's a difference in how this issue resonates across Europe. For Eastern and Northern European countries, security is often about countering the Russian threat. For Western European nations, it's more about economics, investment, and industrial stability. So a smart UK position would appeal to these varied interests, perhaps reassuring Eastern states about security while easing financial concerns in the West. Instead, the UK seems to be moving forward without fully understanding or acknowledging these subtleties. Starmer's team seems cautious, perhaps overly so, possibly due to lingering anxieties from Brexit's divisive legacy. And this is where the bad reset narrative starts to emerge. Rather than a fresh, proactive approach, Starmer's reset risks being overly timid and lacking in direction. There is no formal structure to this reset. It's not like the Brexit negotiations where Article 50 guided the process. Instead, it appears the UK will be engaging with the EU on a case-by-case basis, working on specific areas of mutual interest rather than something more comprehensive. And this piecemeal approach may seem practical, but it risks diluting the UK's influence. To make real progress, the UK needs to invest in understanding Brussels' internal workings and political cycles. Right now is actually a good time for Britain to make headway, as the EU institutions are at the start of a new term. But there's an issue. Britain has become more of an outsider in Brussels than even some other non-EU countries. Since Brexit, the UK has lost its standing within the EU, and rebuilding those relationships won't be easy. Sources explain that Britain's decision to distance itself has left UK representatives and lobbyists isolated within the EU landscape. Other countries, even those outside the EU, are often actively building relationships in Brussels. But the UK's approach since Brexit has often been to burn bridges rather than build them. This situation is as challenging for British lobbyists in Brussels as it is for the government. Without strong access to EU officials, UK interests in Europe are at a significant disadvantage. So how can Starmer steer this reset back on course? One step might be to refocus on the issues that resonate most with EU leaders. Security and defense cooperation is high on the EU's agenda, particularly with rising concerns about global stability. If Britain could make itself indispensable to the EU on security matters, it might gain valuable leverage in other areas as well. Trade is another major area where the UK could build ties, but Starmer needs a clear, detailed plan here. Senior German officials have already expressed frustration with the UK's vagueness. The German MEP David McAllister recently called for concrete proposals, even quoting the Spice Girls by saying, "Tell us what you want, what you really, really want." And if Starmer wants to avoid a bad reset, he'll need to start providing answers and show the EU that he's serious about a meaningful partnership. Now, it's worth noting that Starmer's government disputes the claims that they aren't engaging with the EU. A government spokesperson recently said that the UK continues to work with businesses, industry groups and experts from both the UK and the EU. And they also mentioned the expertise of UK diplomats stationed in EU countries. But this response hasn't convinced everyone, and many in Brussels still feel that Britain's approach lacks the urgency and depth required for a true reset. For a good reset to happen, the UK needs to move beyond superficial engagements. It needs to start addressing the complex underlying issues that Brexit created and find ways to work constructively with the EU. So, is Brexit shaping up to be a good reset or a bad reset in the end? Right now, it's too early to make a final judgment. But one thing is clear. If the UK continues to take a cautious non-committal approach, it risks squandering a rare opportunity. This reset could be a chance for Britain to rebuild trust and regain influence in Europe. But it will require a clear vision, concrete actions, and a willingness to engage deeply with the EU's complexities. Only time will tell if Starmer can turn Brexit into a good reset. So, thank you for watching Outside Views, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into Brexit's impact, please subscribe for more thoughtful discussions on British politics and our post-Brexit world. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged, and the next video is right here in the end screen.